Welcome back, guys. The CalDigit TS4 Thunderbolt 4 dock is a good and very solid product, but should you sell one of your kidneys for it? With 18 ports of connectivity, a premium build, and features to match, you might be tempted. I do spend a lot of time every single day sitting at my desk. I've tried my best to make my setup as comfortable, functional, and as productive as possible. But the problem though is I use a laptop. And depending on the laptop port and connectivity, it starts to become a big issue. Take the M1 Max MacBook Pro that I own, for example. It has 3 Thunderbolt ports, a HDMI port, a memory card slot. Fair enough. This is good for on-the-go use, but with the Thunderbolt port that double as USB-C port, if I want to attach more than one monitor or more than 3 devices, I'll need some kind of adapter or dongle. When you have a ton of stuff on your desk that needs to be plugged in every single time you move your laptop, it becomes annoying. Take me for example, I need Ethernet, an audio interface, connecting more than one external monitor, a NAS, and multiple USB A and C devices. And if I want all of that, my only option is a dock, like this one, the CalDigit TS4 Thunderbolt 4 dock. With just one cable, I can connect to every one of the 18 ports on the dock to access everything. But the question one would ask is this dock actually good enough? Is it worth the high price tag? First thing first, the TS4 comes with a power adapter which is quite large, a Thunderbolt 4 cable, and 2 rubber strips out of the box. The overall form factor is surprisingly small and compact. The metal chassis is quite hefty and sturdy, and it has a rubber on one side so you can use it in upright mode if you like. You can also install the 2 rubber strips that come with the dock if you want it to sit flat on your decks, but what I found is that these strips didn't really work very well. The dock still sometimes slides when plugging in cables from the front or back, and I need to hold it in place. On the front side of the dock, there's a UHS-2 SD and micro SD card slot. And yes, you can use both at the same time. There's an audio combo jack, 2 gigabit USB-C ports, one of which provides 20 watts of power output, which is great for charging a phone, and a 10 gigabit USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 port providing just 7.5 watts of power output. That's all for the front connectivity, although I would have liked an additional USB-A port. And since the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros have SD card slots already, having this extra slot on the dock, the SD card slot improves backup time when I have multiple cards to backup. There's a white small status light at the front of the dock to indicate if there is power or not. Now to the back of the dock are so many ports. Starting with the host port is where you would connect your computer to the dock. This is good as it is at the back. Some docks have it on the front for some strange reason, which results in cables constantly strewed across your decks. The dock also has a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port is awesome and great, but it's not something so many people can take advantage of. Firstly, most internet plans cap out at 1 gigabit speed, and if you're using a NAS, you need the existing hardware or capability like link aggregation, for example, to be able to max out the 2.5 gigabit bandwidth. And if you need to edit 4K footage from a NAS, 10 gigabit is preferable, which this dock doesn't natively support unless you use a 10 gigabit to Thunderbolt adapter. If CalDigit had added a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, I think it would have upped the price on this dock a bit more, which is already expensive to a point where it wouldn't make any sense financially. Moving on to Thunderbolt, you get 2 dedicated downstream Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4 ports with 15 watts of power output. Unfortunately, these are only located in the back, meaning you have no easy accessible Thunderbolt options on the front to quickly and easily plug in external drives, for example. Now, regarding external drive speed, for certain high performance drives, you get a slightly lower performance through the dock compared to directly attaching to your Mac. I've never personally found this to be a big issue and is a problem with the controller on some individual drives and not the TS4 itself. CalDigit went with a DisplayPort 1.4 port rather than HDMI. Why? Well, I suspect that this is due to an increase in the amount of people switching to a high refresh rate resolution 4K 144Hz monitor, and DisplayPort is able to provide enough bandwidth for the image signal as long as you're using the right cable. The CalDigit TS4 dock has the ability to easily switch between a Mac-based setup and a PC-based setup. However, if you want to connect a HDMI monitor, you can either connect an active display port to HDMI adapter or use a USB-C to HDMI adapter or to a monitor that supports USB-C. Either way is relatively inexpensive, but note this dock does not solve this single external display output restriction. Also, the TS4 does not support display link technology. A workaround to this would be to get a dock that supports display link tech. The TS4, when compared to the older version, the TS3, is noticeably bigger and heavier. The TS4 also has 18 ports versus 15 on the TS3. Notably, the front port selection is better and faster, with them all being 10 gigabit versus just 5 gigabit on the TS3. And the TS4 provides more power output for device charging like your cell phone. For example, with a 20 watt output versus just 7.5 on the TS3. Moving to the back, you of course get a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet versus 1 gigabit on the TS3. The DisplayPort on the TS4 is DisplayPort 1.4 versus 1.2 on the TS3. And this is important depending on what monitor you're currently using and what kind of bandwidth it needs. The TS3 can do up to a 5K display at 60Hz refresh rate or dual extended 4K displays each with a 60Hz refresh rate, while the TS4 bumps the single monitor resolution up to 8K with a 60Hz refresh rate or dual 4K displays each with the same 60Hz refresh rate. And if using a single monitor, you can get up to 144Hz for 4K monitors and up to 180Hz with ultra-wide monitors at 1440p. You also get an additional Thunderbolt 4 port on the TS4, which is in my opinion a most welcome upgrade. Thunderbolt 4 is the most up-to-date version of Thunderbolt and will be relevant for many years to come, and if you're someone who likes to future-proof, I would recommend getting the TS4 over the TS3 whenever possible. The only exception is if you can get the TS3 for a very good price. So, is the TS4 worth it? Especially for how expensive it costs? At the end of the day, you do get what you pay for. I'm at my desk for sometimes very long hours of the day and I have a ton of stuff that needs to be plugged in. I also don't intend on buying a new dock for at least 5 years plus, as long as the technology doesn't change too much. And when you look at some other Thunderbolt or docks out there, the price of the TS4 actually starts to look a little bit less eye-watering. Many of them have big compromises like way fewer ports, the host port is at the front, resulting in a Thunderbolt cable across your decks 247, or they're just as expensive as the TS4, but again, compromised in a lot of areas. So yeah, after 6 months of daily use, the experience has been pretty positive. I have nothing but a few issues with the TS4. Very occasionally, I might run into an issue where my laptop won't connect to the monitor or the dock won't respond, but I can count the number of times this has happened on one hand, and it's fixed in about 10 seconds by simply unplugging the dock from my laptop and plugging it back in. In overall, there's a reason why this dock constantly pops up in reviews or online forums, and the previous version was even sold by Apple themselves on the Apple website. It is a good dock and I would definitely advise you to get one for yourself. Thank you for watching. If you like this video or learned something, please consider leaving a thumbs up and subscribing. See you on the next one. Bye bye. And yeah, I must say, CalDigit didn't sponsor this. I paid money to get this dock, and I've loved it ever since. Thank you. See you next time.